Hey folks, welcome. Here we discuss real stories by real people. Today we have the story of a man who finds out that his wife has been cheating on him with his twin brother. Let's see how it goes. Story 1. Here's some background. I worked in the army and was often deployed every 3 to 6 months, leaving my ex-wife home alone. My ex-wife and I had met in high school. I was friends with her boyfriend until one day she kissed me and I liked it. And although I wasn't her usual type, as she was at the top of the range in high school, she had a banging body, good grades, and a perfect smile. And yet she fell for me, the handsome, quiet guy on the football team. One thing happened after the other, and a few years later, the next thing I knew, I was down on one knee asking her to marry me. Once I returned home from a 6-month deployment within our first year of being married. Not being with Lauren for most of our first year of marriage had driven a little wedge between us. And after a while of being home, things got better, and we were closer than we had ever been. I had learned that she was well known around the town we lived in. During that time, my fraternal twin Jake moved to the town I lived in, and Lauren and I still spent the majority of our time together and could not seem to get enough of each other. And like an average guy coming from war, my ex-wife and I were having sex every chance we got. She seemed to have learned some new tricks ever since our wedding night. Although I found it suspicious, I could never bring myself to question it. After all, she was my high school sweetheart. And why question it when I was enjoying it? A few weeks before I was deployed yet again, my ex-wife Lauren and I found out she was pregnant. Excited and afraid for our unborn baby, I had asked my fraternal twin Jake to watch over my ex-wife while I was away. With that decision being made, he was at my house often and got comfortable there quicker than I imagined. After about a week or two, Jake and Lauren seemed to have formed a strong bond. I would come home from training and find them cuddled up on the couch watching movies. It didn't seem to bother me as she was my wife and he was my literal twin brother. 7 months into her pregnancy, I was deployed yet again. And although it made me sad that I wouldn't be there with my Lauren as she gave birth to our first child, I trusted that my brother would take great care of her, but he did more than I asked for. Lauren and I constantly wrote to each other, and I found out she had a baby boy and named him after me. Words couldn't explain how happy that made me. 6 months later, I was finally back home and found out Jake was mostly sleeping in the guest room in my house while I was gone, to take care of Lauren, or so he claimed. I didn't question it. In fact, I was thankful he was there for her when I couldn't be. It reminded me of how he and I had always had each other's backs. As time flew by, my son's 1-year birthday rolled by and we threw a party with a few family and friends. As the party was coming to an end, I noticed Jake and Lauren were missing from the party. Looking through the house, I noticed Jake and Lauren having a heated argument in my son's room. And what I heard struck my heart. "When are you going to tell him that the child's mine?" said my twin brother. Filled with anger, I burst into the room shouting at Jake and to leave my house. My wife at that time kindly asked all the guests to leave, and Jake left along with them as I decided to cool down before I talked to any of them. I had a feeling that by the end of the day, the whole neighborhood would know what had taken place. I sat down with the baby I still hoped was mine, asleep in my arms. I sat questioning how my own brother, who I had spent 9 months within my mother's womb, my own blood, the guy who I had grown up with, would go behind my back and sleep with my ex-wife in my house. Lauren returned to me crying as she watched me cradle her baby in my arms. She apologized countless times, blaming the lack of attention I gave her on me, even though I'm in the literal military. She said she couldn't handle the long distance, although she had known what she was signing up for when she and I got married. She told me I didn't make her happy, that the distance between us had made it harder for her. She told me that she only hung on to me for my money and the benefits that my job gave her. I was flabbergasted to say the least, especially when she told me that my brother made her feel better than I did. She told me she never really got a paternity test, but highly believed the baby wasn't mine, as the baby supposedly looked more like my twin brother. Mind you, as she slept with other guys before my brother. I decided to file for divorce as I couldn't live with the fact that my wife had cheated on me. Following that, I chose to take a paternity test. I appealed to the court for a paternity test to ensure I wouldn't be abandoning my child. The court accepted my appeal and DNA samples were obtained from my wife and me both because there's fraternal twins involved. It had come to my attention that my recent business had become the neighborhood tea, and that I wasn't the only one eager for the paternity test results. A couple of weeks later, the results came back and I read them in front of my whole family, including my ex-wife. Was I surprised? No, it wasn't my child. The divorce was finalized some months later, and I was finally happy to rid Lauren of all the military benefits she received because of me. My brother had asked to adopt my son, and I gladly allowed it. I didn't like the idea of spending money on a child that wasn't mine. It's been 3 years and I just got back from my final deployment. I've got to say, life's never been this good. I'm about to leave the military, and I did enjoy serving my country. I can't wait to get back into dating, as I've been called back to that life multiple times in the past 3 years. I recently received an unexpected long email from guess who? Lauren, which is really the reason I'm making this post after all. She apologized about what she did during our years together, claiming she has changed and she didn't know what she was doing back then, which I think is something that could easily be summarized. She ended the email by asking for my help, telling me that she believed Jake and her were soulmates, but with recent events, she discovered that Jake's cheating on her with a married woman. She says she wants me to help her out and knock some sense into Jake so her marriage can survive. Honestly, I just burst out laughing. I have no will to do so. I believe Jake has simply come to his senses. She also went on to say she has nobody else to turn to, that her family abandoned her and her friends weren't willing to help her out. She's also pregnant again and she misses me, the way I took care of her. For the sake of my peace, I chose not to reply. Emails keep coming from her, updating me on how she started working 7 months pregnant, and how my brother's neglecting her and her child and not supporting them financially. I feel bad for my nephew, but this is no longer my fight. Her last email to me was her asking for some financial aid for the baby and probably her too. But that's the last I've heard of her, or at least till now. I'm sorry this happened to your marriage, OP. Both your ex-wife and your fraternal twin are awful people. Your ex-wife could have cheated with anyone else in town, but yet she couldn't stop herself from getting involved with your twin, even though she knows the kind of rift it would cause between you two. But then again, she wasn't the only one who picked their emotions over their relationship with you. Your brother did too, and he's not blameless. I'm glad you're living your best life and that you've been able to heal from the past. I hope you have better luck with your partner this time. Good luck, OP. Story 2. Full story. As you read this, keep in mind, I'm not leaving my wife 32, and any advice to such will be ignored. I'm looking for advice to overcome my inability to forgive. Context. I, 33 male, am in good to great shape, charismatic, awesome with people, successful. I'm currently an investigator full-time and an officer in the National Guard. I held 3 commands in the Army as a captain with very high marks in each. My faults. Goal-oriented, did not learn her language of love until all this came out. And at times, like most alpha-type people, I can disconnect and get driven by the task that needs to be accomplished. This is a long time in the making, over 2 years in fact. My wife cheated on me. We were 8 years into our marriage when she did so. We were married her senior year of college, and 1 year after, I graduated. I was active duty at the time, National Guard now. My wife is also in the National Guard. We had just come home from a National Guard deployment, my third and her first, and she started working with a new unit with new people, not the same people on the deployments. Keeping in mind this was only a once-a-month gig. It was a rocky time in our marriage. We saw a marriage counselor and things got way better, and things were on the road to being better than they had been before. I thought we were both happy. Then I noticed she started acting differently. I was a patrol officer for a city at the time and just choked it up to the bad hours I worked. To make a long story short, she goofed and left her email up, and due to the way she was acting, I read through it and discovered the evidence of the infidelity. She came clean, begged for my forgiveness, etc. While I was still coming to grips on this bombshell, she told me she's pregnant. Fear not, my son is indeed mine. Checked and verified. While I was contemplating divorce beforehand, I couldn't throw the woman I love out on the street while she was caring for a little one. As I went from outrage over the infidelity to elation of having a child, checked, verified, and the timeline doesn't work out for her infidelity as well. I forgave her. It was tough, but I did so because I truly love her. I've had certain women I know who I no longer talk to offer me revenge. I shut that crap up. I'm not looking for that. For myself, I've gotten much better speaking her language of love and keeping work and goals at the door when I walk in the front door. She truly has been contrite, acknowledges fault, and places no blame on me for her actions. She's also gotten better at not thinking I'm a mind reader. Overall, she's a much better person. My son is now slightly over a year old and has had time to think about what occurred. Mentally, I've fallen back into the outrage over all of this. I have ridiculous levels of self-control, some not so much. I love cookies, and don't let it show that often. So Reddit, I'm not good at asking for help, but I'm not going to let this ruin my marriage. This hasn't become a problem yet, and I don't want it to. What strategies have any of y'all used to help combat this problem? Looking for advice to overcome infidelity in a marriage of 11 years. Wife cheated on me, so I forgave her. What strategies did you use to forgive your partner? No, I'm not leaving her. Leave that advice somewhere else. OP, I would recommend professional therapy for both of you. This is not something that gets better on its own, or by trying harder. You need to see that she's putting in the work to figure out why she cheated and how she can change herself to no longer be that person. And you need clarity to see exactly what is sticking in your craw at this late date. Too many people resist counseling as if it were the worst thing on earth. Don't be that kind of person. Now for some comments. You've left out a lot of information that will affect what is needed, and are so set on your own ideas about how to salvage a relationship that you attribute disagreement with you to hatred of all cheaters. You think you know why she cheated. This has nothing to do with hatred of cheaters. With very few exceptions, people who cheat on their spouses are broken and in need of professional help to heal. Until this happens, it's not a matter of if, but when they will cheat again. There are a lot of people here who can't get past the notion that if someone cheats, they deserve nothing less than drawing and quartering. Ignore them. There are only two types of people in this situation. Those who can look past it and form another relationship with the cheater, and those who can't. You need to decide where you are on this scale. It sounds like you're a person who can move past it. I'm not sure if you'll ever be free of the concern and anger. But seriously, give yourself some time. My wife cheated on me 3 years ago, and 90% of the time, I don't think of it. But it does come back into my mind. You need to figure out what you can do to handle it when it happens, because it will. Good luck. The simple answer is, this was bound to happen, certainly with the personality type described. You saw a problem, you worked out a resolution, you secure your position, and you set about the rebuild. Right now, you have some space to assess progress. And right now, your unconscious mind has decided that the panic is over, and it's time to let you know how you feel about what happened, kind of like delayed shock. Now is the time to talk this through with a professional. You're a career man in sorting shit out and taking care of your team, that's clear. You are not, however, a specialist in emotional and mental health. A counselor, on the other hand, is, hence that suggestion.